Hey YouTube, Phoenix 21 Studios here, and I thought I would just speak candidly. Now that I'm finished with my full stereo install on the 2005 C6 with the Bose system, got a picture pulled up here of the head unit that I chose to go with, and you can see me install this in another video that I have, and the video touches on mostly getting this bezel piece out. By the way, after you do that a couple times, you know what you're doing and where to pull. It's really easy to do. Um, did not go with the touch screen. Not a big fan of the touch screen. This just for some reason feels more period correct. This is sort of a 90s look, and the 2005 to me is almost a continuation of 90s sports cars. And I went with the DPX 793BH. I got that from Crutchfield, and I also ordered the harnesses that go with it. You'll receive a harness. When you buy this, you can select if you have the Bose or the non-Bose. Go ahead and select that you have the Bose system, and when you get the harness piece, there'll be a connector that says Bose or non-Bose, and if you're removing your amplifier, which I highly recommend that you do, and we'll be going over that in this video, you can just switch it from Bose to non-Bose on the fly. So there are some reasons for getting away from the Bose system. I am very particular about the sound of my stereo, and I've installed 3 or 4 stereos in different vehicles that I've had. I decided that I would tackle this issue, and I wish that I had from the start done it the way that I ended up doing it. I wanted to keep the Bose amp and make it work, but ultimately what you end up with is really bad quality sound. It's just how it is for the Bose and the Corvette. Thread after thread on Corvette forums of people complaining about it. One of the reasons for that is that the Bose system has a front center speaker right here, and it's mono. It's just an average of the left and the right. Also, the rear speakers, look at this. It's bridged, and because it's bridged like that, it's also mono in the rear, and that sounds absolutely crazy to do. I think that the idea that they had is that since it's a small compartment, that the rear stage for sound is really just filler. But ultimately, I didn't like the sound at all. Technically, you don't have tweeters. You have these small woofers that do mid-range they're not on the door. Those are mounted in the door panel. And I'll cover some more of that in the video. I have some video footage that I took during my install, but I wanted to start this whole process talking more over a slideshow, really. The lower section of the door, the ones that are actually mounted in the door, are these. I think that they're technically subwoofers. They come out. This box represents the Bose amp. They come out from receiving like a flat line or level signal. It's filtered to be low pass into this speaker, and then this speaker has an amplifier built into the front of it. It's the craziest looking speaker I've ever seen. I'm not a fan of the sound. It has really great mid-range, but to me the whole system just sounds like mid-range, and when I level my sound with an EQ, I up the bass, I sort of flatline the middle or drop the middle, and then raise the high. And you can't really do this with a system that is only pumping out a lot of mid-range. So the first thing you can do, the easiest part, is going to be accessing that center speaker. Completely disconnect it, get it out of the picture. I'll show you what I ordered to replace those lower and upper door speakers. Got it from Crutchfield. It's the Rockford Fosgate Prime. Now these tweeters, at first I thought that they were going to be too small. What I did is I bought ABS plastic. I traced a pattern around the door speaker and made a bracket that just matches perfectly in the spot. When you order this from Crutchfield, they do include a mounting bracket for this component speaker, the larger one. It takes a little bit of tweaking. It's not exactly perfect. If you don't order that with this, just get some ABS plastic and make your own. It's super simple and easy to make your own just by tracing the outside of the factory speaker. These little tiny tweeters are what's called surface mount. So there's a metal ring. You cut your hole through your ABS plastic, mount the speaker, and just snap the ring into it. You're not going to use these covers. These covers aren't removable, but you can sort of position this speaker within this housing so you can aim it up, down, left, or right. This is the amplifier that I got to replace the Bose amp. The reason I got it was recommended from the Corvette forum. What's great about this is that you can get ABS plastic. Let me find the picture here. This is what this guy did. He just traced the pattern of the Bose amp and mounted his amp onto the plastic housing. These holes line up perfectly with the mounting spot for the Bose amp, so it's really easy to do. At first I bought too thick of ABS plastic. I wasn't going to be able to cut it without a piece of machinery. And the other piece that I had from a previous project was a little bit thin, so I'm not sure what the perfect thickness is for this ABS plastic. But buy the thickest that you can cut yourself with whatever tools you have available. I have trauma shears, and they're handheld, but technically you can cut a penny in half with them. They're that strong. This is what some other people in the forum have done with their amp, with their brackets that they've made a little bit more complex. The power supply for that amp, this was questionable to me at first because I didn't know how much power could safely be drawn out of this fuse housing. I got to looking, and there's a cable that goes from the battery that's very robust. It's probably 1 or 0 gauge wire. So that told me that this port right here for power, it can handle pretty much any amp that you want to attach into it. And with the Rockford Fosgate amp, you're going to need a 60 amp fuse because the max power that it draws is 50, so you go a step up and choose 60 for your fuse size. The fuse that this guy's using, I could not find one like this. I ordered one from Amazon, and you can buy a bag of 10 or 15 of those 60 amp fuses for $7. And the fuse housing itself is only maybe $7 or $8, so that was easy to do. This amp requires 8 gauge power and ground. So I decided to go to Lowe's Home Improvement and just select my own length that I needed from the rack that they have. But the wiring that you get from them is not the same as if you bought a speaker wire installation kit, because the wire that you get in those kits is very malleable. It's very limp wire, and what I've got from Lowe's is the strands inside of it are more robust and thicker. There's fewer strands, but they're larger in diameter, and that makes for a very difficult to work with wire. It stays in place, and you have to bend it to get it around turns and crevices. So I would recommend looking at the wire that has the more strands in it that are more fine, less diameter. I'm not sure what that wire is called. What I had felt more like it was for wiring inside of a house or something commercial grade. So with the, I've lost my train of thought here. The ground for that amp is going to go right here. There's already some things that the car has grounded into that. When I took that screw out and looked, it had paint on it. If you want to, you can scrape the paint so that you get the full contact. But remember that the threads of this bolt going in does give full metal contact, and then the head of the bolt connecting into your grounds, that's still going to give you your full metal contact that you need. Back to this pinout sheet. You're going to need to run a remote line. Depending on how you run this amp, you need to run a remote line from your head unit. And so I have obviously an aftermarket head unit. On that Kenwood, it was the red wire. It comes from a fused line, so it has to be fused. and it has to turn off when the vehicle's off, so that makes a good remote line. I just spliced into it, added it on there, and then retraced the new wire back behind the head unit in the dash. The fuse that runs on in the car itself is 15 amp. What I mean by needing that remote line is that if you use the RCA cables that are on the back of the head unit, you're going to get what's called a low level input or a low signal input, and that's fine. That still is quality sound coming out of those. But if you wire directly into the speakers, this particular amp is supposed to activate from that voltage. So the raw wires from the speaker coming, or from the head unit coming in, that activates this amplifier, and you don't need to run the remote line. It's a feature called auto on. Here's some more of the specs that are on this. I think JL Audio makes another amp that fits really well on that spot. I just knew for a fact that this amp would, and I like Rockford Fosgate products, so I got it. The speakers that I have are running on 4 ohm, and this amp is a 4 ohm amp, so that worked out great for me. Adjusting it and tuning it, it was supposed to have come with a CD for that, but you can just tweak it yourself. Once you have it all wired in, you can adjust the gain. I can't get these photos to enlarge for some reason. I have another video about just this amp. It's an unboxing video. The way that I chose to run the wiring on this is that on the outputs, I have the tweeters ran as front and the lower woofers ran as rear, and I have nothing on the rear sound stage. I still have to install a sub and a box. That's a later separate project that I'm going to do. I wanted to see how this sounded just as it was, because some people on the forums recommend that you don't even need the rear sound stage. It sounds fine, but there's just something that's missing in the sound, sort of the submersion of being in sound from a 360-degree field. I can sort of pick up on that it's missing in this car, so I am going to add that sub, and that'll be a video for a later date. Okay, so apparently I'm having an issue getting videos off of my phone, so I'm just going to redo these videos, sections of them anyway. So what I wanted to talk about was the wiring for these two speakers. This right here is the channel that you're going to run them through. When you reach your hand back in here, there's going to be a little plastic box that's right about here, and you'll notice that wires come out on the top of it. If you grab that box and pull it out, it just pops out. It snaps into place, and you can pretty much run your hand up to right here with one hand and push the wires in on the other. The biggest issue that I ran into was making sure that when this window pane comes all the way down, the wires are going to clear it. So be sure that you utilize electrical tape and wire them together with the other set of wires that runs through there, so that your wires aren't just loose and dangling. Otherwise, when you go to put your window down, it's going to catch the wires and just rip them out of the speakers. For the other side, it's the exact same thing, but you're going to have to manage running the wires across here. So underneath here is a little hole, and what I did is took a metal clothes hanger, ran it through there, very easy, low resistance, and then tape your wire to then your coat hanger and pull it through, and you'll do that for both the upper and lower speaker. Right here's a plastic sort of cover, and you can run the wires over that. Don't let any of your wires ever hang down or be close to the pedals or anything. The last part we'll go over is the wire going through the firewall. A lot of people are really iffy about this kind of thing. I don't think that you can see this now that I have the battery in place. There's a rubber grommet behind this battery. If you've got newer than a 2005. This battery won't be here. It's in the rear of the car. So I just took the clothes hanger, made a little sharp tip on it, and pushed it through. Some vehicles, those grommets are so tightly spaced and there's so many wires going through them that you can't really risk doing that. You'll puncture those wires. But on the Corvette, it's got a lot, what feels like a lot of extra room to where you can push it through. It feels like there's no risk of actually puncturing a wire on accident. So you run the wire through. This is not finalized, by the way. I've just got this taped into place. I'm gonna have some come up with a way to mount this away from here a little bit, but it's got these 2 holes in here so I can get some self-tappers and find a way to secure that in. Getting your center speaker out is as simple as a gentle lift on this plastic piece with a flat tip of a screwdriver. The whole thing pops out. There's some metal clips in it or plastic clips. It snaps into place. You just pull the speaker out with a little, it's like a disconnect. You push in and pull out. And you can leave it as it is. Don't try to cut the wires or anything. Just leave it in that connection housing. So I'm not able to get the video of the installation that I did with these brackets. This is what comes from Crutchfield, this plastic bracket. And this piece of paper is what comes with the speaker, the Rockford Fosgate speaker component set. And this piece of paper is specific to that speaker. It's the model number listed right there. So you cut this piece of paper out and you lay it over this piece of plastic, secure it in place, and where these holes are is where you will drill for, they're not, I guess that they're snap rings, but what came in this kit just didn't work. There was a clearance issue, so what I had to do was take a screw that was slightly larger in diameter than the pilot hole that I had drilled so that the threads would catch on the plastic, and that ended up working for me. I got lucky with that, and I was able to get that mounted, and that's what it looks like. If you go with the route with the ABS plastic for the larger speakers, keep in mind that you can't lay the Bose speaker flat and flush against your ABS plastic to trace it, so you'll have to be very careful in how you trace it. I would just recommend getting this plastic piece and using these screws in there because it worked really great. So that's my recommendation on that. So thanks for sticking around and watching this video. I know I've just put this together as a bunch of clutter because I don't have the original video that I recorded when I was actually installing it, and I know it's not as interesting to watch what's essentially been a slideshow. But my afterthoughts on this are, do not attempt to just replace those lower Bose speakers because of the impedance difference from the Bose amp. Get yourself a Rockford Fosgate amp like I got, or a JL, or something that matches the impedance. Otherwise, you're going to be maxing out your head unit and having harmonic distortion. It sounds awful. It's a night and day difference since I've added this amp. It sounds more like there's a more full range. Earlier in this video, I was talking about how the sound system from Bose just is all mid-range, but with this new system, the highs are there, the lows are there. There's actually surprisingly a good amount of thump in the bass from this component set, but it does not have the sort of low-end ambient bass drone that you would want, just that sort of fills in the sound. Hopefully I'm going to get that when I add the sub. I had heard that people had been using a coaxial, which is a full range speaker that does low, mid, and high in the rear. They were not satisfied with that. It seemed like that it was overpowering in the rear. I can't give you any recommendations on the front. I just know that this component set sounds so much better than I expected. I do have the large woofer set to all pass. I thought that I would put it on low pass, and the range wasn't there, so it's all pass. It doesn't sound distorted in any way. When I get the bass in, maybe I can pick out some non-copyrighted music tracks and throw that together. And it's anyway, it is hard to determine how quality a system is based over on the microphone of your cell phone while you're recording this stuff. But I know it's been a long video. Thanks for sticking around and watching. If you have any questions about this, ask it in the comments. I've done days and days and days of research trying to figure all this out. Hit many dead ends on many things, and I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on the do's and don'ts of this. So, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.